The thing I wanted to talk about today for our primary topic was working nights. Now, last week we talked a little bit about where this idea of uncredible comes from. And a big part of the idea of being uncredible is that it's regular people doing incredible things, or average people doing incredible things. And what I define as an average person may not even be considered average anymore today. So I want to start by giving you a little bit of background on how I grew up. I grew up in a family where my dad worked all the time. He worked a lot. He was a factory worker for most of my childhood, the childhood that I remember. He worked for one factory, mostly night shift as I remember, although I do think he did jump back and forth from shift to shift. It's hard to remember when you're a kid. You just don't really remember all that. But he worked 50 to 60 hours a week, and when the factory slowed down, he was working a second job at Kmart. So I grew up in a household where hard work and putting in hours consistently over time was kind of what I got used to seeing the people around me doing. My dad, as an example, was constantly going to work, and it wasn't just the work. You know, I think everybody grows up with a family member who goes to work and comes home. That's normal. What was abnormal, and I've looked back on it and I've wondered, like, how did he find the time to do it? Because we definitely know he was working 50 to 60 hours a week, and I don't want to say this in a bad way, we didn't miss him. He was still there. You know, we knew he was at work, and when he came home, there were times that we spent together. So, and those times were sort of set in stone. You know, Sunday nights, actually all day Sunday was really reserved. We saw Dad all day Sunday. You know, we would do, in the wintertime, which is what it is now, we would shovel homes in the morning. We'd go to church, and then afterwards we would have lunch. And I even remember having pizza, Domino's pizza, in Sunday evenings. It was just like these regular routines. So it's not like he was at work all the time and we never got to see our dad. No, he was there. He found a way to make both things happen. And that's the kind of example that was set for me. And that's what I consider to be average, okay? Somebody who's putting in the work. But nowadays, you're hard-pressed to find people who are willing to work 40 hours. You're hard-pressed to find companies that are willing to pay people 40 hours because they don't want to give them benefits. I mean, both sides of those coins are true. So, but for me, when I think about somebody who is average, doing uncredible things, I'm thinking of somebody who's working hard day in and day out, losing sleep to earn that money to pay for the needs of their family. And that, the people that I think of, and this is just my experience, you might have a different experience, but the best people that I think of are people who work night shift, okay? And I was thinking about this on my way home from work tonight. By the way, I do work night shift, and I wanted to share some of those stories. I was thinking about this. I don't really know if what I'm about to share applies to like any other industry other than factory work. I just don't know. I've never worked in the nursing field, for example. And when you look up shift work or night shift, a lot of times you'll find examples of people who are working in the nursing field. So I don't know if this will correlate, but I think it does. But specifically, some of the best people that I've run into, people that I would call, quote, uncredible, are people who work night shift. They sleep during the day, and they get up in the evening, and they go to work all night long. And then they have to deal with the normal things of life in the morning. Just a constant cycle of dealing with night shift. And one of the best examples I can share of when I first drew this correlation between some of the best people I know and factory work and night shifters was when my son was born. It was actually before my son was born. I was working at a Frito-Lay plant in Binghamton, New York, and working nights. Sometimes it was 12-hour shifts. Sometimes it was 13 on, 1 off. I mean, we did a lot of work. And I had been there probably 3 years. My son was born in 2008. I started working there in 2004. So I had built some good relationships with the people who worked at that plant. And I distinctly remember when I got out of work one night and people were like, hey, you need to come in this room for a minute. And this room was like a big team room where before and after shift, we would meet with the next shift, share some basically nonsense stuff with each other so that the next shift could be set up with anything that might have gone wrong. But there was never anything to share that they didn't already know about. So I got called into this room, and there's presents all over the table. And they had me sit down, and I don't know how many people have noticed, I don't know if they even still do this, the Cracker Barrel rocking chairs that like sit out front on the porch and you can sit in them. I don't know if they do that anymore, but these were like handcrafted rocking chairs that I guess you could purchase them because they had one there, and they got that for me, and they put my son's name, which we had known, but my son hadn't been born yet. And the factory workers, not the factory, not the manager, the workers, knowing that I had a son coming and it was my first baby, they got together and threw me a baby shower. Now, my perception of a baby shower was for the mom, right? You know, we do something for the mom. I wasn't in that mindset. Nowadays, we're more progressive or whatever, and the guy gets roped into everything. But back then, you know, if you were going to do a baby shower, it was for mom, you know, and dad might be there to play some games or something. But they threw a baby shower for me, and I thought, nobody asked them to do that. I certainly didn't put on that we needed anything. Like I wasn't like, yeah, it's going to be tough because we can't really afford it. There was none of that. You know, I didn't talk about it in that way. They just did it, and this was all night shift workers who took time out of their own schedules to not only arrange and organize this thing, they stayed late after work in order to put this party on. And they used their hardworking money, hard-earned money to buy me these gifts. And I just remember walking away from that thinking, these are the best people. Like these people who work day in and day out on the floor. And it's important for me to say the people who work on the floor, because there wasn't a single manager that was involved in this party. This was just the workers appreciating each other. I mean, I was one of them, okay? And they were saying, hey, we want to help you and we want to celebrate with you. And I was like totally surprised because it was just not something I expected. And keep in mind that at the time, I was in college studying to be a pastor. I was going into ministry. I have never, should I say never? I can't remember a time when even the church, now I'm sure this in some churches this would not be the case, but I can't remember a time in the church where I felt the way I felt about these people, and partly because I felt like they had no obligation to me, where a lot of the times in ministry I was serving in a leadership role, so I felt like there was some sort of obligation, whether or not there was some sort of like, he's our pastor, he's our youth pastor, he's our Sunday school teacher. There was that like expectation that we should do something for him. These people at this Frito-Lay manufacturing plant, there was no expectation that they should have to do this or would be expected to, right? If they had done nothing, I would have thought not an ounce less of any one of these people. But because they did this unprovoked, not sure what the word is, just without any expectation that they should have to do this, it stuck with me for a long time. And it was after that particular moment that I began to think about like what is a good person? You know, like I'm studying for ministry. What's a moral? What's an ethical person? And these people, by the way, if you've never done factory work, these are some of the rawest people you'll encounter. Probably most of what I've heard in the factories, particularly on night shift, I can't even post on YouTube or Spotify. It's probably not even allowed. But the heart of these people is so real. And I've thought about this for years because I've been working in third shift for 2004 to now, off and on, probably about, I'll say conservatively, 16 to 17 years of my adult life have been on third shift. And I've thought about what it is about, particularly third shift, but factory work also, that makes people like that. Like what causes them to be that way? And I've come to this conclusion, and it might be wrong, but this is what I get down to. These people deal with real life every single day. They're constantly dealing with the realities of life. You're not on third shift by choice typically. I am now because I think they're the best people, and I choose to be on third shift. I could be a first shift. I've had offers to go to first shift. I've been to first shift and didn't like it. My schedule is, because I've been doing it for so long, naturally I work better as a night shifter. But it's also because I choose it because of the people. But typically the people who are on third shift are there by necessity. They have bills to pay, and this was the only job they could get, and the job offered third shift, and so they have to be on third shift. Or maybe their spouse works first shift, and so now they have to be on third shift in order to balance out things so they can be there for the kids. There was pretty much everyone who was on third shift that I've met had to be on third shift. It wasn't a choice. And so every day, these people, seemingly against their will, I mean, they want to do it. They have to do it for various reasons, but they're doing something that's hard for them every single day because it has to be done. And I think there's something to be said when I look at like endurance running, which I'm just now getting into. There's something to be said about the grit of completely turning your body clock upside down so that you can survive. I mean, that's the reality, right? So you can survive. There's something about that builds a level of character that it's difficult to explain. It's not an ethic or a moral that you would read in a book. It's a strength of character that creates people who are, by all outside measurements, kind of raw, kind of rough around the edges, and yet very real, very genuine people. And I love those types of people. And this main topic is really about working night shift. And I've done it, like I said, for like 15, 17 years of my life. I love it. I enjoy it. But I've met some of the best people working on nights. And I wanted to share two other stories about some things that I've learned from working night shift. And one of my favorite things I learned was from this guy named Sam, who also worked at Frito-Lay. This was back in I worked there from 2004 to 2008. And I remember Sam said something to me that just kind of blew my mind. And it's stuck with me. And I say that because I've already shared with you that, for the majority of my life, I've gone to church. I have a master's degree in ministry. And the fact that this guy, who was like as average can come, loved his job, was a joking guy. He was the guy who would pull little pranks and things like that he was able to say something that has stuck with me for over 20 years. Just blows my mind. And what it was I remember one night at Frito-Lay, during the summer, the weekends would just get so long. I mean, we were like July 4th was our big holiday where, like most places, it's Christmas time, right? You just got to get to Christmas time. Or Black Friday might be, once you get past Thanksgiving, things slow down. For us, it was July 4th. I mean, the amount of chips that we put out leading up to July 4th it was just incredible. And we were working and working and working hours and hours. And I remember one night we were getting close. I want to say this was the weekend of the 4th of July. It was the end of this long run. We had all put in, weeks and weeks of just, 13 on, 1 off, 12-hour days. And this was the last night. And those of us who were there volunteered to be there. We were like, we'll do it because we need the money. I think we were getting paid holiday pay, so we were getting paid good. But we did want to go home. And it was third shift was ending the week, and then we were going into the holiday. So nobody was coming in the next morning. This was it. And we were working away, and my whole job, I'll try to describe this for you, was to take bags of chips, and they would come down a conveyor, and you would scoop them up. We were doing Frito twists, Frito barbecue twists, if you've ever had those. I don't even know if they make them anymore. But these Frito barbecue twists was the only line running. We had 4 lines running, And it was me, Sam, two other guys, but Sam and I were right next to each other, and our rotation was just me and him, back and forth. And we were just making the best of it. We're 6 hours in, I think. And all you do is you scoop up, they're in the bags. You pick the bags of chips up, turn around, put them in a box, and then you take two more and put them on top. So you'd have like a row of 5, and then 2 bags on top would be 7. You'd fold the box, and you'd build a skid. And I can't remember how many boxes went on a skid. I know there were 6 times 12, whatever that is, 6 times like 72. Is that right? Maybe 60 boxes, 72, it seems like a lot. But however high, we could stack them, and then they'd get shipped off to be distributed. But we had been working like 6 hours, and one of the things that night shift at Frito-Lay had to watch out for was the day change, because we would get there at like, I think we started around 11:15, and the expiration date on the chips had to be changed at midnight. And so one of the things we would typically do, we rotated every hour. So one of the things we would do is when we rotated that first rotation is we would all just stop for a minute, check the date, make sure the date changed. And oftentimes it wouldn't, and you'd stop and you'd throw out a few bags of chips that had the wrong date on it, and then you start up again. Well, this was the end of a long couple of months of hard work, and we were tired. We were excited to go home. We were excited to be like the only ones in the plant. There was just a certain laxness to our labor at this point. And it was like, I want to say 3 or 4 in the morning. We were getting close to being done. We just had to hit I don't know if we had to hit a certain number of pallets or bags. I can't remember what the expectation was. But we rotated, and I checked the code date. That's what we called it, the date code, whatever. I looked at it, and I realized in that moment, I was like, we forgot to check the code date. And we had been working probably 2 or 3 hours with the wrong code date. So we called the person who would change the film, and the bags before they are turned into bags, they're just a roll. And then they go through this form where the chips fall down and then they get sealed up. And we called it film. And we stopped the machines. We called the machine operator over and we said, the dates are all wrong. So then we went through the difficult task of checking until we found the first one that was right. And we had to throw all the other ones out, which meant we were going to be there a little bit longer. Now, I share all that with you to say this. A lot of emotions at this point, right? Some people are happy. Like I said, there's only like 5 or 6 of us there, but some of us were happy that we were making more money, right? So we're just like, yay, we get to be a couple more hours. We're going to get bank a little bit more overtime. There were others who had only signed up to get a little bit of money and get out of there, and they were upset. And, within yourself, you're feeling both of those emotions too. You're like, oh man, we were this close to going home. Now we're going to be here another couple of hours, and you're just sort of wrestling with these realities. You're tired. You just want to be done for the vacation, for the holiday break. And I remember Sam said this. He goes, I want to read it because I have to make sure I don't screw it up. But he starts laughing, and he goes, sometimes we make friends, and sometimes we make money. And I was like, what are you talking about? And what he was saying was, sometimes in business, particularly that business, you would make friends by giving them too many potatoes. So the chips are measured by ounces, right? And so sometimes the ounces would be too many, sometimes they would be less. And so what he was saying was, sometimes a bag of chips doesn't have as much as it says is on there, and so you made money. And sometimes you have more and you make friends. And what he was saying, he was kind of chuckling at himself because this was a saying that he had said before. In this situation, we were going to make money, right? So I guess that's a good thing. So we made money, but we're not going to make any friends because in this case, we weren't going to get home to our families. We weren't going to get to our parties. We were going to be tired. And that has stuck with me for so long. Just the fact that, when you're in business specifically, sometimes you make friends, you give away free stuff by accident, and sometimes you make money. And it's a positive outlook no matter how you look at it, right? Like, oops, we shorted a bunch of bags of chips. I guess we're going to end up making money on those ones, right? Or oops, we put too much in each bag and so we lost money, but hey, we made some friends. And I was like, that applies to a lot of things. And that's just stuck with me ever since then, my entire life. I've remembered that 22 years. I've listened to hours and hours of sermons. I don't remember hardly any of them. There's very few quotes that I can remember. But this guy saying this at that moment when people were kind of frustrated and tired and irritable, wanted to go home, really stuck with me. Now, another one of those situations happened at my current job, so I can't use too many names, but there was this guy named Steve, and we were there. This was a Thanksgiving situation, and at the place where I work, the work stops when you hit an e-stop, obviously, right? And there's a little red light on it when you hit that, and the light comes on. And when the line's moving, there's a green light, so red light, green light. So there was one Friday. It was a Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. We were all getting paid holiday pay plus vacation, so it was like double time to be there, plus our vacation. So we kind of call it triple time. It's technically like double time plus vacation, but it ends up being you're getting paid 3 times. And we're there, and there were a lot of people who just wanted, same situation, right? A lot of people who just wanted to go in, work a few hours, get good money for like 5 to 6 hours, and then go home and still be with their families. They don't want to break up their vacation too much, but they wanted that money. And then there were some people who really wanted the money, and so they wanted to drag things out. And I happened to be at a station where the people around me were mostly, we want to go home. Let's get these parts out as fast as we can, and then we can go home. And so we're rushing. We're trying to get things done. And it seemed like every 10, 15 minutes, the line would go down because someone hit the e-stop. And people were getting frustrated and more frustrated. And then finally Steve comes over to me, and he puts this like stupid grin on his face. And he's like, "You want to know why I'm smiling?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why are you smiling, Steve?" And he says, "Every time that red light comes on, I make money." And he made the joke that he could switch those because every time that light comes on, he makes green, he makes money. And I thought to myself, this place, like working in a factory, can really frustrate you because you work all these hours and they're constantly doing things that a lot of times don't make sense to you. And it was in that moment that I realized that the key to working at any job that might be tough for you to get along with is to love what they're giving you. And what I noticed in my first couple of years working there was it was very easy to be like, oh, there's mandatory overtime. Crap, I won't see my family because I have to be here for work and they're making me do it, right? Or, hey guys, we're in a downturn right now, so you're not going to be able to work this week. Oh man, well, how am I going to afford things? And I noticed that people would very much get emotional no matter what the company was giving them. They would not like it. Sort of like, oh man, like no matter what happens, I'm going to be frustrated. And I was like, I can flip that, right? If the company says, hey, you have to work overtime. Oh, so you're saying I'm going to make money. I can be positive in this situation. Or, hey, listen, it's a downturn. We can only work 32 hours. Well, I can be upset about that. Or all those times when I complained about having to work all this extra hours, I can be happy that I get to spend time with my family. Now, some of that requires you to be prepared for that, but I learned that valuable lesson not from a pastor, not from a professor at college. I learned that from an uncredible guy working in a factory. That particular guy worked on first shift, but I learned that from a guy who worked in a factory. And both of these little nuggets of truth have stuck with me way more than a lot of the other things that I've learned getting an undergraduate degree, a graduate degree, master's degree. All those things are great, but associates, bachelor's, master's, boy, I can't think of 2 more valuable lessons than that I learned in all those years. And I paid good money for those degrees. And these guys taught me this just off the cuff, working side by side with them in a factory. Like working night shift, working in a factory work, these are some of the most credible people you'll ever encounter because they've had to deal with life. They're real. And as I talked about last week, the people that I discovered who were the most credible were the people who would be the least credible in a paper that I was writing for college. The stuff that I learned in college would be considered credible, but it wasn't valuable for everyday life. So I share all this to say working night shift and choosing to work night shift and learning to have a good attitude about night shift has really taught me to embrace the things in life that everybody hates and to find the value in that. One other quick example, I remember being put on a machine that nobody wanted on night shift. And your initial reaction is, oh, nobody wants this job. Everyone hates it. It's the hardest machine to do. It's difficult. And listen, it was dirty. It was hard. It was physically hard. It was mentally hard. It was tough. And once I learned that machine and got comfortable with that machine and gained that knowledge, it took probably, I want to say over a year to get comfortable running that machine. Pretty soon, that thing that nobody wanted, me and one other person were able to do it. That was it. Now, since then, that machine's been ripped out. But at the time, I became invaluable to the company because I valued doing something that nobody else wanted to do. And that's a lesson that I didn't learn from anywhere else but working night shift in a factory. And one of the reasons, like I said before, that I stay on night shift, not only am I used to it and comfortable with it, and yes, I think some of the best people work night shift, I've learned to love the things that other people hate. And now that transitions over into this thing that I'm doing now, which is running. And I think the reason I've taken to running so much is because most people hate running. I kind of hate running, to be like the actual mechanics and the physical expenditure on your body, the muscles hurting, the hard breathing, the heart rate, in the summer, the heat, in the winter, the cold. These are all things that people hate, and I love it. And I think it's because I've learned this lesson that there's value in loving to do things that everyone else hates to do. And my encouragement from this particular main topic is look around you and find things that people hate to do, that maybe even you hate to do, and do them. Do them like you love them. I think it was Mike Tyson who said, you have to love the thing that you hate in order to be great at something. You have to embrace it and not just kind of push through it, but you have to love it. One of the things that motivated me to make this the main topic this week was a video I saw on Instagram where this lady, probably some expert, who knows, was saying that, listing off all the stats that go along with working nights or shift work about how they have a higher risk of cancer, higher risk of heart disease, lower lifespan. And it just sort of made me chuckle because I can see how if you hate working nights and you have to work nights and you hate it, I can see how that could really affect a person to where they would eat poorly, not exercise, be worn out, mess up their circadian rhythm. All those things are true. But also, I know plenty of people who've worked nights their entire life. My dad's one of them, or most of their life. And my dad's in his 70s. And I'm in the best shape of my life. And I've actually been on night shift. I have been in the worst and best shape of my life. And so I've kind of come to this conclusion that it's not about whether you're on night shift or not. It's about how you look at being on night shift. And that goes for anything, any job, any task that you're doing, any exercise, any workout, any diet. It's your attitude towards that thing that's going to affect whether or not you're successful at it and whether or not you reap the results of doing that thing.
No quit, no quit. Building their wall. While they talk about us, all they talk about us. experience, still not credible. So we embraced it. Now we're uncredible.